everyone, my name is Zehra, and today I'll be talking to you about GPAs. All of us, in one way or another, have been judged on the basis of this scale. So on that note, the pursuit for a high GPA fails to produce real advantages. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the system and how it has been created for us and does not help reflect how smart a student might be. In actuality, it just shows how disciplined he or she might be. Research done by two individuals by the name of Angela L. Duckworth and Martin E. P. Seligman from the Positive Psychology Center at the University of Pennsylvania showed that the relationship between GPA and self-discipline was 67%, while the relationship between GPA and intelligence was 32%. Although it is true that a lot of us might actually be smart enough or have gotten high GPAs because of our intelligence, it is just a coincidence. The part of the brain that actually associates itself with self-discipline isn't fully developed until the age of 25, which most of us aren't yet. So basically, these young individuals are judged when their brains haven't even been able to fully develop. My second point, students no longer care about actually learning something because they are too wrapped around trying to get those high GPAs and getting into those amazing universities, which leads them to cheating. Most colleges, like Cal State Fullerton or Cal State Long Beach or any of those Cal States, they don't ask what an individual is interested in, but they just look at their submitted application and decide if they should accept them on the basis of those numbers and letter grades. Because of this, students find themselves cheating to get those high GPAs. A report done by the professor at Stanford by the name of David L. Jaff states, while about 20% of students admitted to cheating in high school during the 1940s, today between 75 and 98% of college students each year reported having cheated in high school. That's a lot. He also reported students who cheat often feel justified in what they are doing. They cheat because they see others cheat and they think they will be unfairly disadvantaged. These cheaters are getting 100% on their exams, while the non-cheaters may be only getting 90 or even less because of their hard work. The third point, when an individual gets out of the world of GPA, jobs don't necessarily care about how high the applicant's GPA was. Susan Adams from Forbes magazine wrote, the applicant with the high GPA doesn't always get the job either. For instance, a student with a 3.2 could be an applicant with a 3.9. If the student with the lower grades were working 30 hours a week to put himself through school and at the same time serving as class treasurer, he might get the job. Jobs are based on experiences, self-worth. Because GPA doesn't fully help understand the capabilities of an individual, the jobs are often given to those who have more experience and are more accomplished. The pursuit of high GPA doesn't produce real advantages. Students should not be judged by how well they might or might not be, or might not have done on the basis of this scale. Every individual has a mind, and everyone has their strong suits and weaknesses. But the GPA doesn't give them a chance to prove themselves. Rather, it just shows how disciplined they are. But the question here then becomes, do we want a system that puts individuals ahead just on the basis of how disciplined they might be? Or do we want a system that helps those individuals show what they are really made of and what they can really accomplish? And obviously, we do want a system that shows the individual and how accomplished he is and how much he has worked. And thank you.
Thank you. All right. The propositions identified, the phrasing on it is a little bit awkward, but I think we ultimately know the point that you're making about the futility or the lack of utility of the GPA. There's not really a preview of what the structure is going to be, and so we have to listen for those points as they come up. And I think that you signpost only occasionally, and I'm not sure that I could go back and figure out what the line of argument was based on the way you've structured the speech. I can say that there's an argument about cheating, and there are hypotheticals about hiring people, and then there's also an argument about discipline. But I'm not exactly sure what all the declarative claims are on those particular points, and I think your argument would be clearer if you could state those things as declarative statements and organize them more effectively. You would have the impact that you want to have with the issue that you're talking about. You made reference to a study that talked about the relationship of the GPA to self-discipline versus the relationship of GPA to intelligence, and I thought that that was an interesting study. You do, I think, need to provide us with some information about how intelligence was measured in this particular study. I don't know what the standard was. If you're not using GPA as the measure of intelligence and you're just correlating it with something else, what's the other thing that they correlated it with in that study? Because I'm not quite exactly sure how we're going to be measuring intelligence and being able to see the correlation that you're talking about here. The claim that people's self-discipline doesn't really kick in until age of 25 is largely asserted, and so I don't doubt that there's probably some truth of that, but I think that you ought to be providing information to support that particular point. You did have a statistic that talked about the number of cheating, how the numbers of cheating went from relatively low in the 1940s to relatively high today. I appreciated that statistical information. Again, I think the citation needs to be a little bit clearer. The notion that people justify this to themselves and others because they see themselves in a competitive position, I think you explained that pretty clearly. I'm just not sure that I get it demonstrated that that's in fact what's happening. We've got a lot of hypotheticals going on in your examples and not a lot of practical experience to apply to those situations. The same thing is true with the job thing. I'm not exactly sure if GPAs aren't really going to be used in the long run. Why is anybody worried about this enough that they would cheat? You're saying it's to get into the particular schools or colleges. So we should have some information about what the demand is to get into those colleges and why GPA is the key factor. There's another place where you assert when you're transferring or you're trying to get into one of those colleges or universities that GPA is the only thing they're looking at. And I'm not exactly sure that to me, that's probably going to be one of the weak links that the response speaker talks about, because most admissions policies emphasize a variety of things, standardized tests, for instance. Didn't we hear a speech about standardized tests? Yeah. So there you go. I mean, it's, that if that person was doing the response, they'd say, GPA, nothing. They don't pay any attention to that. It's all the standardized tests that they use to make that kind of argument. And they'd be saying there's a different cause than the one that you're talking about. So I think you need a little bit more information on that point to prove that particular point. All right. It sounded a little bit like you finished abruptly, too. Sort of like you got halfway through an idea and then you just came to a stop. You need a bit more of a summary.